right now might just be the best time to play Tarkov's PVE mode. And whether you're a brand new beginner to Escape from Tarkov, or you're someone that's played way too much Escape from Tarkov, especially the PVE mode, then you're going to be able to at least get a good gist of why this is the case right now, and I'm going to give a couple of reasons as to why I'm thinking that actually playing PvE right now is probably the best it's ever been, apart from maybe the recent introduction of mortars. But with that out the way, in terms of long-term content as opposed to events, Tarkov's PvE mode has a variety of factors, and we're going to get into them in today's video, and I'm interested to see whether or not you're still playing Escape from Tarkov PvE mode, or whether you've just started playing, what your opinions are on the whole mode. And we're kind of going to break down a couple key sections, which is A, how are the AI, how is the gameplay actually feeling within Escape from Tarkov? It's pretty one of the biggest factors as to whether or not you're going to enjoy the game, regardless of all of the menu content that you might have, the tasks and all the events and everything that comes into the game. What is the actual gameplay like? We've also then got the market. How accessible is the game and the features of the game itself to get into it? Is it still mega expensive for people to get into? Are some of the prices of some of the items that are going to be required for hideouts and stuff just mega expensive? Have they been overinflated? Are people abusing the market to kind of force players to pay extortionate prices? We'll get into that as well. And then, of course, we'll talk about kind of some of the other aspects of the game and some of the things that have happened over the time that PvE has been released. And I think it's an important video to at least give you a milestone if you're watching this in the future, or at least if you're watching it now, to kind of maybe reflect on whether or not you think that the game is in a good direction, whether you think it's going in a good direction. So with that underway, let's talk first about the gameplay. But before we do that, if you can hit the like button, that is the best thing that you can possibly do to help me out. And so first things first, it's gameplay. What is the gameplay like on Escape from Tarkov? Well, with the recent addition of some of the changes made to the AI within the game, which have been kind of revisited multiple times, at least in PvE, because of course you have the PMC AI, you've got the boss AI and everything that kind of correlates to PvP as well. So you have, of course, boss AI, you've got Raider, Rogues, that sort of thing that is in both versions of the game, but specific to PvE, you have the AI PMCs and suspectively, I guess, players, but not really players, because at the end of the day it's very difficult to kind of actually code in realistic player-like movement or AI. I mean, you think about any game in the entirety of the world that has actual player-like AI, it's very, very limited, if at all any, because it's very difficult to predict what players would typically do, because maybe they do the wrong thing, and how do you make sure that the AI do the wrong thing at the random time that they may do that? So, you know, how do you code in that your mouse is going to hit your coffee cup that you're drinking at the same time? How do you do that? And so obviously it's very difficult to actually do that. That's kind of not a realistic thing, but you get my drift, that it's not perfect, and it never is going to be when you're playing against a computer, because a computer isn't a human, at least not at the moment. So maybe in the future it will, but either way, we're talking about here and now. But in terms of the AI as it currently stands, well, to start off with, the AI were very, very dumb, to the point where, like, they would literally stand in one spot after they spawn and then they just spin around. There wasn't really a whole lot to them, and they were essentially just a rogue AI that basically just sat there, or a Raider AI that kind of just sat in one spot. They didn't move around the map, they didn't do a whole lot, and it was really kind of a bit boring to come up against, you know, some of the PMCs that you find in the raids. It would be very annoying when you did play at the beginning, because of the fact that you had to come up against these AI and they would just be in a group, and, you know, you could meet 5 of them all in one singular location that was pretty much guaranteed every single time in the raids. They spawn pretty much every time in those spots, so as soon as you found out where those spots were, you were fine. And so it was just basically farming AI, because they're always in those spots. Now, Now it's kind of slightly different. Of course, with the introduction of the movement of the AI within the game, they do actually move around. They will move from one location to another, and they will actually run when you do start firing against them, and they will also push you a lot more now, even as a group, rather than previously where you may take out all of the AI except from one, and then that final one would then push you. Now it kind of is that they can all push you at the same time, or they can all be quite passive and kind of stay in one location and whilst they're engaging you. Of course, they've introduced a new change as well, which is that they'll kind of move between cover and they'll make dynamic movements when they're actually in that cover spot, to make it a bit more, I guess, human-like, a bit more challenging for some people. And I think that is kind of cool. It makes it a bit more tactical, and from that standpoint, the AI has dramatically improved from where we started. But is that the level at which we should be deeming as good? Well, I don't think it is good, because there are a lot of other things with the AI right now, such as shooting through bushes and obstacles that are basically, you know, you would never see as a human. Like, you would never just randomly shoot through a bush and, you know, directly hit someone or aim lock them through a bush, unless of course you're playing PvP with cheaters. But you get my drift. They're not exactly perfect, and that sort of thing is probably in the game where they're trying to avoid that happening, where the AI can see through things, but it doesn't work perfectly because some trees might have a slight little opening where maybe it can actually, when they scan an area, for example, which I don't know how it exactly works with the AI, but I would assume that if you're within their sight range, which may be like a pixel of a tree, they'll be able to locate you and then take you out, which is obviously not perfect, but that will come along. I'm sure that we'll see upgrades to the AI system, and I think Tarkov are wanting to introduce AI into PvP more as well and improve the systems that are in PvP, so it's kind of like a dual thing that they'll just do that over time. And so I think that that is a good thing that we'll have coming soon. But gameplay wise, we've obviously had a lot of changes from how the AI worked, including now that they go and loot things, although the looting of AI is not very good. They don't really loot up many things, and it doesn't really seem a whole lot of loot to actually take off of PMCs. Combine that with the fact that a lot of their gear is terribly durable, and so their durability on their gear is absolutely terrible, and so weapons and stuff like that, you can very rarely find one that you can actually repair to a decent quality. And it kind of, I get the idea why they were trying to do that, is to kind of force you to go and try and actually find weapons by going to certain locations and maps to unlock certain doors and get actual weapons that way. But at the same time, it would be nice occasionally to find a fully like kitted out weapon with kind of more meta attachments, as opposed to your bog standard like 15 different loadouts that AI PMCs can basically have in the game. So from that standpoint, you know, it could improve definitely. And of course, if they made it so that they actually loot a little bit more, could also be good. But, you know, those are things that aren't too gameplay impacting in terms of like how it feels within the game when you are attacking an AI. But it would be nice to have that a bit more. Obviously, there's improvements to be made with regards to AI engaging other AI. They do it now. You will see PMCs and scavs, for example, attacking each other, and bosses and PMCs attacking each other. It isn't all the time, and it kind of still feels like if you aggro a scav and aggro a PMC at the same time, they do not care about each other. They will only attack you, which I don't know if it is entirely realistic. I mean, it makes for a more kind of sweating yourself as you're going round against them, so it's a bit more challenging. But is it realistic? Maybe it should be slightly different. I don't know, but that's up to debate, and I'm not entirely sure myself. But it would be better to see the engagements between the AI slightly improved to the point where, you know, they do have a bit more fighting, and PMC on PMC action would be much better. I don't see a whole lot of it happening right now, so yeah, that would be something to kind of note as well, that PMCs are going to fight each other a bit more if they're of different factions maybe. So with that being said, obviously there'd be negatives to that, but we won't get into it. I'm talking about the here and now. So with that being said, overall gameplay feel, what does it feel like? Is it better than when it launched? Absolutely. The gameplay feels much, much better. The AI feel much better, but there's still a bit to go. So that's kind of the summary of the gameplay, and I think that so far it's the best it's been. Although there are some things like the goons, for example, and stuff like that, and the spawn rates of certain bosses being super low right now. Yeah, it's kind of a fine line between trying to get the sweet spot, and I'm sure BSG will at least try and overcome that to a degree, and I think that would be a good thing. Now, onto the market, and the market is where it's going to get interesting. So when I first started playing Escape from Tarkov PVE mode, I was kind of a bit worried about the actual market that we're going to see within the game, but my kind of fears have changed a little bit from where I believed that people were just going to be extorting the market stupidly, and because lots of people had crazy amounts of rubles. For example, myself got 783 million rubles, and if I wanted to just buy out something for like multiple days on days, I could do that, and you know, price fix stuff and that sort of stuff, but it's not really happening a whole lot. Yes, you'll get the occasional thing, but most people aren't too bothered about the fact that they could price fix things, and I think that's the way to go. I'm not interested in making 10k rubles on a single player game from price fixing something up, and you know, you can make 10 million or whatever from playing the market. It's interesting, you know, I'm just the sort of type that would rather just buy a load of stuff hoping that it's going to go up, with some inclination as to why that might be. For example, if there's going to be an event coming on or something like that that's going to require certain things, then maybe I'd buy up a load of the stuff in preparation for it, but I'm not going to go out and actively price fix things. It's just not fun. But at the same time, that is a kind of thing that I was quite worried about, and with the amount of rubles in PvE, because of course, like, the costs of actually running PvE are very low. Insurance, if you play single player, is basically like without another teammate, for example, if you're playing PvE, is basically 100%. There are some instances where I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, some of those have been where I just haven't insured the weapon parts that I put on a weapon. Yeah, I mean, in a group, PMC's AI will actually loot up your body, so that is a thing where you could lose stuff, but it's very rare, and so yeah, you're not really losing a whole lot of rubles, which means every single raid you're basically making rubles, unless of course you're opening up doors and getting super unlucky. But then that's the risk that you're taking, open up doors. Things that I was seeing going crazy were, for example, marked room keys. So previously we were seeing some of the marked room keys be up at like 40 million rubles or whatever. They have come down, but they're still quite expensive. And to be honest with you, they're not really profitable. I wouldn't really open marked room keys anymore. I just don't think that the loot in them is particularly great. And in terms of opening them up to make rubles, it's just not really there anymore. The Dorm's marked room key, of course, can give you key cards, but they're not that common anymore because they were nerfed in terms of how often key cards spawn in those rooms. With the recent changes to actual key cards themselves, so the labs access key, not labs access, but labs key cards, for example, like a violet card, a 10 out of 10 use card, since they introduced those, is 4.2 million. So even if you get one of them, it's giving you 4.2 million, but you're spending 25 million, meaning every single room that you open of those marked room keys, you're gonna have to get 2.5 million rubles worth out. Now, maybe that doesn't bother you because you're not interested in if you lose a bit of money opening them or whatever. You're just doing it for enjoyment purposes, which is absolutely fine. And I do that all the time as well. I'm not too fussed on losing money out of the marked rooms, but the actual content, and for a newer player, probably not the best, because you don't want to buy something that's so expensive hoping that you're going to get good stuff and just lose a ton of money doing it. Of course, the key cards, not guaranteed. You probably pick up 3 key cards out of a 10 use key if you're opening the Dorms one, but yeah, that is kind of one of the top end key cards. But then you have the only real marked rooms that I do actually recommend opening is opening the reserve marked rooms, because essentially you can trade them in to be able to get a Dorms marked room key from Jaeger, I believe level 4, something like that, or it might be level 3. not entirely sure. But yeah, the Dorm's Marked Room Key trade, where you can trade in all three. You can open them up 9 times each for the keys, so you could open each one 9 times. So 27 total openings, and then you trade them all in for a Dorm's Marked Room Key, which you then just sell. Because each one of these is worth a little bit, so 8.8 million. But if you add up the total cost of each one of these, you're probably spending about 30 million, something like that, to actually purchase them. Just slightly less than 30 million, so like 28. So you're spending 3 million and you're getting a key worth, or a Dorm's Marked Room Key worth 25 mil. So you're spending 3 mil to open 27 rooms, which, you know, that's not too difficult to actually make your money back from. It's like 100k per room, and you will definitely make that. So yeah, it's probably the only keys I think that are actually worth it, and it's only because you can then go ahead and sell the Dorm's Marked Room Key rather than open it yourself. But either way, that's kind of the market. In terms of like standard items, like the high-end market has come down a lot. So that's, you know, a factor of a load of different things, like they nerfing a lot of the rooms and making the loot a lot worse. All of these keys and very expensive items come super cheap. So, you know, purchasing power of players that started from the beginning that have a lot of money is much higher because they can buy more volume of certain items, because their money is kind of worth more. Like the items that are high end are no longer as expensive, but they have the same amount of money. But for a new player, makes it more accessible. They don't have to grind as many rubles. And in terms of the value of standard loot, which is something that like new players or players that have just been playing for a long time will notice that they're kind of on the cheaper end, pretty much across the board. Everything is relatively cheap, I assume, because a lot of people have upgraded all of their hideouts and everything like that, and everything has come down significantly. Now, one thing that I want to touch on, because it is going to come at some point, is the prestige system. And of course, prestige system, people are going to do it. They're going to essentially reset their character back to 0. You can already do that if you wanted to, but I'm not going to do it until that actual system comes into the game. But you'd reset your character for some kind of, I assume, cosmetic that would then, be on your account. Maybe it's just like a jacket or something. And then, you're reset back to level 1, and then you have to get everything again. That sort of time, that is where you're going to see materials go through the roof again. When you reset your account, I would assume that all your money goes as well, so that'll be wiping a huge amount of money off the market. And with the recent changes where you don't make as much money, it's going to make those players that have kind of been sat on so many rubles, it's going to take a long time to get anywhere near to where they were previously, comparatively to what it was like at the beginning. And that isn't the worst thing, because standard loot is, pretty consistent. High tier loot has come down, and as an accessibility for a lot of players, it is good. It's in a good place. I was expecting that the market to kind of explode over time as people just end up just spending more money on purchasing some of the items that are required for different things. And the only real time that has ever happened is during times at which events happen. So common items that you would normally just find in raids go they explode. They go from like 20k to like 900k during events that come out on PVE. So that is the only time where you really see like the purchasing power of the people like, for example, me, who have like 780 million, people dropping like 10 million, 20 million on just picking up some of the event items to be able to complete events quickly. That is kind of where a lot of the money goes. But at the same time, if you're a new player, you're able to exploit that, because you can go and find those items in your raids and make a ton of money every single raid during those events. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, and it's kind of redistributing where that money actually is and taking some of the money away from people that are hoarding it in the game. So I think that is good. And so generally, market-wise, I think it is in a good state. The only problem is, of course, trying to keep that consistent and to the point where not everything just drops to discard value, as everyone pretty much has everything. But when I think of that, I just think with the prestige system, people are going to reset their accounts, and that sort of thing will then boost up the market again and kind of inflate some of the prices and kind of keep the market in a more refreshed state where everything isn't just minimum value, unless of course an event comes out. So that sort of thing looking pretty good. Market wise, I think it's fine and probably in the best place that it has been. Everything's pretty stable right now, and yeah, I don't think you could hope for much more with regards to that. And then kind of the final bit, which is kind of the events and stuff that have been in the game, like the kind of tasks and everything that's within that. What has that been like? Well, recently it's probably been worse because we haven't seen a whole lot of events come out. Yes, we've got a recent event, which is the mortar strike, but that has been a bit of a controversial one. The mortars have been very, very strong in the game, but at the same time, you know, they're experimenting with it. They're going to nerf it probably, and make it more manageable. And so with that, you know, not the worst thing in the world, but we'd like to see more events where it's kind of centered around doing various different tasks, especially towards the end game of a character. So if you've been playing since the launch, you're probably all the way through most of your tasks, depending on how much you play, obviously, or at least, you know, you're getting to the stage at which money doesn't really matter. You're not going to lose money, and you have enough money to purchase whatever you want in the game every single time that you do get taken out, regardless, and insurance has your back covered anyway, so there becomes no real need for money. And so you're looking for things to do in the game that keep it fresh and everything like that. And the events have been a bit kind of lackluster recently. I assume that's mainly because of the PvP wipe, where BSG have been focusing on completing and introducing events centered around PvP rather than PvE. But as the PvP wipe goes on, they'll probably start focusing a little bit more on PvE. It would be good to get a more consistent schedule for events, kind of with a monthly event or a weekly event or something that comes out that's kind of special, or a kind of cycling event, and then have like more unique events come in when they normally would. So just some stuff that you can kind of keep doing and kind of grinding out or whatever, maybe having some sort of reward at the end. But overall, kind of tasks increasing in volume. There's lots more tasks now. On PvE, you're constantly getting new tasks. I mean, for me personally, there's just been a ton of tasks come into the game, and so we've got a load more to complete now, and kind of go towards completing some of the Lightkeeper tasks to get that fully unlocked and kitted out as a trader. The ref is going to be coming into PvE as well, which is good. They kind of did mention that in one of their roadmaps, so that should be really good as well. And so the more traders, more tasks, more stuff to do, unlocking those rooms that are ref locked that we've had in the game, and as a PvE player can't actually access because you don't have the ref to actually get the keys to open the doors. And so a lot of rooms that were previously available got locked and then put behind the ref, and now we can't actually enter those rooms or get any of the keys to actually open them, so it kind of limited us on PvE, but it's not too bad. And I think that sort of stuff, as it's coming into the game, it's only going to build upon the game, and I think the replayability of PvE is quite high because a lot of players are relatively casual. You can come on, you can play, and it feels like you're always progressing your character, and with the amount of tasks and events, it probably is at a decent cadence that people who generally are more casual will, get through that. And if you are a more kind of die-hard player who plays way too much, probably like me, then you are going to be able to reset your account at some point with the prestige. So I think in terms of cadence of the game and the kind of gameplay cycle, it's looking pretty good as well. And I think I can't really complain all too much. And when you do get to that kind of stale point where you're not really wanting to do a whole lot, you can experiment with different stuff. You can try creating some weird builds or whatever and try and running around, or maybe you're going to try and run in with some shotgun rounds that have the flash or whatever. I mean, this sort of stuff is good, and I think that it's only going to get better as the game goes on and as we head towards 1.0. So I'm pretty optimistic. There's a lot of negative comments, and the game isn't perfect. I'm not an absolute moron. There are a ton of bugs in PvE, but in terms of like the actual gameplay wise and like playing the game, I feel like it's in a good place, and it will just get better. But at the same time, yes, there's a ton of bugs that will get fixed. I can almost guarantee it, but it's just the fact that they've taken so long to do them that is really annoying people, because bugs happen. At the end of the day, you know, as you develop a game, they do happen. They happen on every single game. It's just how quick do they respond, and BSG have been very slow to respond to a lot of the bugs that were really just causing a nightmare. Like, for example, the space issue in your stash. If you were to slot something into a place in your stash that was slightly different and certain items, and then you were to back out, you get this error here, right here, the critical error, which means I can't use certain areas in my stash, which is super frustrating. But, you know, that happens, and we've got to deal with it until BSG actually go ahead. It wouldn't be a problem if it was for like 2 days, but this has been ongoing for like a month, 2 months or something now, and it's getting pretty annoying. So, yeah, hopefully they fix that. But hopefully that gives you at least an introduction, an evaluation of how the game's going, and also the market. I was wrong. I was definitely wrong about the market. I was thinking that it was going to explode and be stupidly expensive for anyone that's new to play the game, but it really isn't that bad, and I think it's probably the best and cheapest it's been. I assume just because lots of people have got through that stage of upgrading everything, and they don't really need those common items anymore, so they just list it up, and there you go. But either way, if you've enjoyed this video, or you want to add some extra stuff, or you want to just complain, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm happy to read any of them, and of course respond to some of your questions if you've got any. And yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all of the channel members as well that have joined the channel as a channel member. It helps me out financially, so thank you very much. I don't see why you do that, but I amazingly I just appreciate it. So thank you very much to all of the channel members, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.